So, what if the secret to mastering just about any challenge in your life isn't about working harder, but about thinking sharper? In a world that's constantly telling you to move faster, strategic thinking is kind of like your personal superpower. It's the tool that helps you navigate all that chaos with a sense of calm and, believe it or not, turn those obstacles into real opportunities.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking at the two core mindsets, checkers versus chess. Then we'll really nail down what strategic thinking actually is. From there, we'll break it down into three super practical pillars, show you how to make it a daily habit, and finally, we'll talk about the unshakable edge this gives you in, well, pretty much every part of your life. I want you to really think about this for a second. That tiny little pause between something happening and you doing something about it, that's where all the magic is. It's that split second where you get to decide, am I just going to react based on gut instinct, or am I going to respond with real intention? And really, it all boils down to these two mindsets. Over on the left, you've got the reactive mind. It's basically living on autopilot. A problem pops up and bam, emotions grab the steering wheel. This leads to quick fixes and a life that feels like you're just constantly putting out fires. It's like playing checkers. You just make the most obvious, immediate move. But the strategic mind on the right, that's a whole different game. It's playing chess. It pauses, it plans, and it's always thinking several moves ahead, keeping its eye on the long-term prize.
Okay, so let's break this down. Strategic thinking isn't some high and mighty secret skill just for generals or big shot CEOs. Nope. Think of it more like a practical tool for everyday life. It's your internal GPS that helps you navigate any challenge, big or small, that comes your way. At its very heart, strategic thinking is all about being intentional. It's about choosing your battles, really understanding the domino effect of your choices, and spotting the patterns that other people just don't see. And you want to know the best part? It's 100% learnable. This is a skill you can build, not some special talent you're born with. Let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. Just look at this table. You've got two people, and they face the exact same setback. They lose their job. Person A, our reactive friend, totally panics. They bloss out hundreds of resumes and just grab the very first offer they get. The results? They end up stuck, underpaid, and completely burned out. But person B, our strategist, hits the pause button. They assess their situation, they make a plan, and they end up landing a role that's a huge step up. See that? Same event, totally different outcomes. And it was all decided by their mindset.
Okay, so how do you actually do this? Well, we've boiled down the core of strategic thinking into a really simple but powerful framework. 3 pillars that are going to be your go-to toolkit for pretty much any situation you can think of.
These are the building blocks right here. It all starts with seeing clearly. Then you move on to thinking ahead. And finally, it all comes together in acting smartly. You could even think of it as perception, prediction, and performance. If you can master these 3, you've basically mastered the game.
All right, let's dive into our first pillar, seeing clearly. This right here is the absolute bedrock of strategic thinking. I mean, you can't come up with a winning strategy if you don't even really understand the game you're playing, right? Seeing clearly is really about hitting that pause button instead of just reacting. As you can see, it's about defining your end game with total clarity. Like, what do you really want to achieve? Then it's about gathering the right info to understand the lay of the land. And finally, you got to zoom out, see the whole chessboard, and understand how all the different pieces fit together. Now, once you have a really clear view of what's happening right now, it's time for our second pillar, thinking ahead. This is where you go from just being an observer to being a grandmaster, anticipating what's coming next and actually preparing for it. What's so cool about this pillar is just how proactive it is. You're not just waiting for things to happen. You anticipate the future by planning for a bunch of different scenarios, best case, worst case, and what's most likely to happen. You also master the art of timing, learning that sometimes waiting is the most powerful move. And you build up the agility to pivot without panicking when, inevitably, things don't go exactly as planned. And all of that leads us right to our final pillar, acting smartly. Because, let's be honest, a brilliant strategy is just a daydream until you actually put it into action. This is all about turning that insight into real-world impact. Now, here's the key thing to remember. Acting smart isn't about using brute force. It's about leverage, using tools, systems, and relationships to get bigger results with less effort. It's about understanding a little bit of human psychology so you can lead and influence people in a good way. And ultimately, like it says right there, it's about execution, closing that gap between your plan and what actually happens.
Okay, so how do you actually start weaving this into your daily life? Well, like any skill, strategic thinking takes practice. So here are 3 super simple habits you can start doing today to start sharpening your mind and, install this new operating system.
Think of this as your daily mental workout. First up, start asking better questions to really get to the heart of an issue. Second, just take 5 minutes at the end of the day to journal your decisions. It really builds that self-awareness. And third, before you make a move, play a quick game of mental chess in your head. If I do this, what's going to happen next? And after that? When you actually commit to this kind of practice, something really amazing starts to happen. You don't just learn a new skill, you actually step into a whole new identity. You transform from someone who's at the mercy of their circumstances to someone who actually shapes them.
This quote on the screen just says it all, doesn't it? Life is still going to throw you curveballs.